How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Can I have a look at your ID, please?
ID badge, yeah.
What do you do? Adam Whittle?
Yep,
You're a consultant physician in respiratory medicine.
that's me.
Why have you come to see me this morning?
Because I'm the medical consultant on this ward, so all the patients on this ward come technically under my care.
Okay,
So because at the moment you're in a medical bed, not in a psychiatric bed.
that's right,
But
yes.
my understanding from the records that I've just been looking at is that we're waiting to get a psychiatric bed for you.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
Who are your colleagues?
With my colleague.
Yeah, I'm Joshua Haruchachuk, one of the SHOs.
Okay, Joshua, nice to meet you, mate.
Nice to meet you too.
And I'm Nisha, one of the clinical fellows.
What's your surname, Nisha?
Rajaguru.
Rashiguru. And what do you do?
I'm a doctor working on this ward.
What are you a doctor in?
So I'm a really long story. I'm going to be applying for geriatric medicine this
Okay,
year, but
cool.
currently I'm splitting my doctoring work with education.
Cool.
So I'm sort of teaching students
So you're in a third year?
fellows. Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. But we're the medical team of doctors on this ward, so we're all doing general and respiratory medicine at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Fine.
Adam, I had a little chat with a couple of your staff yesterday. I wanted to try and iron out a couple of creases related to something that was kind of quite serious, and it's kind of the reason that I'm here today. I don't know what your remit is in terms of governance, and I appreciate that your day-to-day role in the hospital probably gives you some scope to be able to do some things, and probably there's some restrictive sides to it as well. The reason I'm in hospital at the moment is because I was prematurely discharged from a ward over at Torbay Hospital. I've been in hospital for about a year now, bar a few weeks where I went out. When I was at Torbay Hospital, I found out that during my admission, the present admission to hospital, started on the 16th of May. I was placed under Section 2 of the Mental Health Act at Torbay Hospital Place of Safety. I was then taken to Darlington, Signet Darlington up north. On the 7th of June I was placed under Section 3. On the 20th of June I was taken from Signet Darlington to Signet Taunton. And then on the 16th of August I was taken from Signet Taunton to Torbay Hospital. When I got there I realised that on the Section 2 and Section 3 assessments there'd been no medical legal scrutiny which had taken place. And what that means in the most immediate terms is that without medical legal scrutiny, it's not a lawful detention. So there's 2 amps that need to complete a medical assessment, and there's an application for assessment for and an application for admission. Once a patient's under Section 3, the difference between Section 2 and Section 3 is, I'm presuming you probably know far better than I do. If you don't, one's a treatment order and one's an application for assessment. So it's 28 days under Section 2. Section 3 is a treatment order. So under Section 63 of the Mental Health Act, you can be forcibly medicated. So if you don't take your tablets, you can be forcibly medicated either intramuscular or intravenous. So in that sense, one of the things that the medical legal scrutiny does is identify medical records and make sure that all of those are correct. Even if you were hypoglycemic, anaphylactic, epileptic, you won't be taking chemotherapy medication. Obviously, if you forcibly inject somebody with a strong sedative, that could end their life in that situation. So those medical legal scrutinies, aside from the sort of Section 5 of the Article of the Convention on European Human Rights, keeping it away from the deprivation of liberty and false imprisonment, because you're not allowed to leave, there's also quite a strong risk to life if they aren't completed, as well as exposing them to fraud and stuff. So when I found out that those weren't there, one of the other things that I found when I first went to a ward round, I asked my consultant at the time if I could have her general medical counsel registration details, and she refused to provide them to me, which kind of like for me instantly kind of rang alarm bells. I didn't really understand why. They told me they had to apply in writing. When I did investigate the doctor's credentials, I found that actually she wasn't qualified to consult for NHS England. She wasn't on the Speciality Registra, and her listing was subject to revalidation. As soon as I aired this with the staff, she immediately went on leave for 2 weeks. So I didn't have a ward round, and when she returned, it transpired that what I was saying was totally correct. I did try and report. I tried to raise it with the staff and tried to asked them for my medical legal scrutinies, which they couldn't provide. Eventually, they did put it in writing for me and did confirm that that had taken place. When I was at the hospital, they took a number of my items and put them into secure storage and refused to give me an itinerary for those. Was trying to sort of kind of made it look, to all intents and purposes, like my detention was kind of off the books. I was kind of being held there. It almost seemed as if they were trying to kind of make it appear that I wasn't on site. When I did try to phone it into 101, eventually I did find that the Medicines Act, it's a crime under the Medicines Act to be consulting without to be practicing medicine without a license. It's a crime. When I did try and phone 101, I was rounded around in the hospital, and they stole all of my laptops and my mobile phones, put them in secure storage, to give me any write-ups as to why that was. Eventually I got them back, and I chose not to go down the route of reporting it. But what happened subsequently was that the doctor tried to double my medication about 3 weeks ago, said that I was very, very ill, and I needed to remain in hospital. But I didn't go to ward rounds, and they told me not to. Ward rounds are optional in psychiatric hospital. I did speak with one of the RMNs about it, and he told me that, when I said, look, I don't feel it's appropriate to be, I'm basically detained here illegally. I've been detained illegally now for, sort of 140 days. It's very, very difficult or implausible for anybody to be able to assess that these have been missed by accident. Missing one is like very, very unusual. Obviously, if you're going to be detaining somebody, they could be there for a year or 2 years. It's much like a court of law. If you're going to detain somebody, those medical legal scrutinies, make sure that they're Section 12 approved, make sure that the medical details are correct. So when I did,
I'm going to interrupt because there's very little I can get involved in about this. Do you have a lawyer? That's what you need to talk to.
Nothing. It's not really anything to do with that. So in a nutshell, I've asked for a replacement consultant. And then following that, they haven't. They failed to do that, and then I was immediately made informal without seeing a consultant, and I was then ejected from hospital under Section 3. So they rescinded my section, and then ejected me from hospital while I was away. Had a meeting without me attending, which is why I've gone to go and stay with my nearest relative in Bristol. I didn't have a very good night at all. I wasn't able to. I didn't feel safe or secure, which is why I've ended up. I bumped into a police officer in the street and ended up attending A&E, and I'm now waiting for an informal admission on a voluntary basis. It's kind of a bit of a tautology, because in the first place I wasn't detained legally, and there was 4 sets of the double checking, quality control, if you like.
Do you agree that you need admission at the moment?
I do, yes. When I attended hospital in May the 16th, I did so voluntarily for very good reason, but. What's happened effectively in a really, really brief and condensed form is that I've been ejected from the hospital because I discovered that some serious crimes had taken place at the hospital, and I was detained under Section 3 of the Mental Health Act, and the reason I'm not detained under Section 3 and I'm not being 135 by a police officer, I mean, potentially that would happen. I mean, if you are a sectional patient and you leave a ward, without having the legal paperwork and the paper trail to do that, what that means is that you effectively you aren't free to be out in open society under those situations. The reason why I've been ejected from hospital, it's been done by somebody without the legal qualification to do that, which is why I'm here. So at the moment there's kind of like a dual there's kind of 2 sides to the.
I have to. I'm going to interrupt you, and I'm here as a general physician. I'm not a psychiatrist. So I'm not.
But you are a consultant.
I am a consultant.
So you know about the Specialist Registra on General Medical Council, right?
I do know about this.
But
I can't get involved with what you say happened in Torbay. If you're concerned about the legal qualifications, you need to talk to a lawyer.
At the moment, I'm here on your ward, and the reason I'm here on your ward is because somebody's committed a crime at another hospital, kicked me out, and I've had to come here. So if somebody had just had major reconstructive surgery on their lungs, and a consultant turfed them out of the hospital, and they turned up at another hospital and said, "Can you finish my surgery, please?" And you said, "Well, I'm not going to look at anything that happened at your previous hospital. You've just been kicked out of hospital. We're just going to start poking around, and operating on you."
I can certainly talk to our psychiatric team here.
It's not so much about the psychiatric team. It's more. I mean, this is. It's a legal issue, effectively. I mean, this lady's
you
acting.
need to talk to a lawyer.
Well, I don't need to speak to a lawyer as such. I mean, the reason I'm here in hospital, and I think it's really, really important in terms of referring me and allocating you know, this allocation on your ward and being able to work forward. What's happened is that somebody's committed a crime at a hospital, they've been caught and they ejected me from that hospital. The reason that I'm here and the way that we work forward with, you know, how you allocate your resources, how you allocate, you know, the referrals, is implicitly relative to what's happened at the previous hospital. Like I said, if it was any other illness, if somebody,
I accept that,
somebody was part way through a treatment and they turned up at another hospital and said, you know, I've got X, Y, and Z condition by my own admission, and I've just been kicked out of another hospital because my care was so poor, and I found that there'd been serious crimes taking place at the hospital. It's not really relevant to just say, well, we'll just, I don't feel it's appropriate or really right in terms of the hospital's allocation of resources and kind of like best practice to be able to then just establish a continuation of care and disregard everything that's happened before, because
as I say, it's not something, I mean, you're meant to be, if you like, in a psychiatric, you know, what you've requested here is an informal psychiatric admission.
That's right.
It's simply because there isn't a psychiatric medical medical.
Yeah, so,
I really can't get involved with what the psychiatric care was going on at Torbay. What I can do is obviously pass on your concerns to our psychiatric team, but I think you've spoken to them already.
yes.
And explained some of this to them.
I haven't explained this in detail to them, and the problem is that, without putting too fine a point on it, the reason why these things have happened is not to do with really unprofessionality or people who aren't able to do their job. It's to do with corruption and organised crime. That's the reason why these things have happened. In terms of your remit, basically, I'm on your ward. You're a consultant at the moment. You understand that people must be on the specialist register in order to consult.
Yeah, no, I don't. But as I say, I can't act on your. You know, you're
I'm not expecting you
about
to.
things
I'm not
that
expecting you
happen
to you know, police crime or misconduct in another NHS trust. What I'm asking you to do is, as a consultant who has got a patient in one of your beds on your ward, who's made you aware that the reason why that they're applying for an admission in hospital is not because they're somebody who's been unwell and has had a remission or a relapse and has then tried to re-enter hospital, is because they've been ejected from another hospital and now they're here to try and get a continuation of the previous care pathway. Now, I think that within your remit, without trying to look at governance or enforcement of things which are completely outside of your scope of understanding or your role as an NHS employee, I think that it is relevant if somebody's just been turfed out of another hospital, trying to find out what happened with their package of care up to the point where they were turfed out. I mean, like I said, if it was a different medical situation, it would be if somebody had major surgery on some of their internal organs and they'd been turfed out of a hospital because they'd found that somebody committed a crime.
If it was a respiratory medicine issue, I would agree with you. But
I think in really any other field of medicine, knowing what's going on with that person's internal organs and why it is they've been ejected from hospital, just treating them on the basis of a brand new patient. I mean, what I'm effectively saying is that I should still be under section, and that will make a massive difference in terms of how long this bed's going to be taken up, what the allocation of nursing staff, the psychiatric liaison team.
The issues here are psychiatric, and I'm not a psychiatrist. So what I need to do is to talk to our psychiatric team. I will pass on to them that you have concerns about the care you had in Torbay. I'm sure they will do what they can to investigate that. But at the moment, what we're trying to do is to sort out psychiatric care for you.
So what
I can't provide any of that, and I can't start getting involved in this concern here.
Well, it's not so much getting involved in it. I'm kind of making you aware of it because I think it's really relevant.
I hear what you said.
Because the details of the illegal ejection from hospital basically conducive
I'll talk to our liaison psychiatry team here.
So what I'm saying is that that's not a very good idea, and the reason it may sound a little bit drastic, it might sound a little bit may seem a bit unpalatable, but effectively anybody the crimes that took place at the other hospital I was at were so severe and specifically involved people within psychiatric medicine trust and went quite high up within NHS Devon Partnership Trust. Speaking with the psychiatric liaison team, part of the reason I didn't raise this with the two folk that I spoke with the other day down in your accident and emergency department, it was very, very clear that they certainly by their they clearly weren't unintelligent people, and they clearly didn't lack understanding, but they were pertinently obstinate and obtuse and were trying to derail and deflect anything I was trying to raise relative to this. it was very, very clear that they'd already become a party to whatever crimes may have taken place. I mean, certainly, like, you know, psychiatric teams will obviously communicate with each other, and whatever
There's
conflicts of
nothing I can
interest.
do without communicating with them.
What I'm suggesting to you is that I don't feel it's just expressing my opinion. I think it's valid, and I think my observations are correct. I think that speaking with them probably wouldn't be worthwhile. And I do think that in terms of your
At the moment, what we're trying to do is to organise an informal psychiatric bed for you.
that's right.
I gather
Yeah, I
there's a debate
understand
about
that.
whether that needs to be down in Devon or needs to be up in Bristol.
What's your? I mean, I would much rather it was in Bristol.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and find out whether that's possible. And so as you're a Devon resident, I understand. Which is why
Well, yes. I mean, at the same time, I don't know that. You know, again, I don't know if you would be. I don't know what the position is legally, or kind of like in terms of. So, you know, if you go back to bed allocation, if somebody gets kicked out of hospital by somebody who hasn't got the right to kick them out of hospital, I mean, this lady shouldn't have been allowed on the ward. I mean, she isn't a practicing doctor.
I hear your view about that. As I say,
Well, I mean, for you to go back to the age of bed
I
allocation for somebody who you know has been falsely ejected from hospital, it's not. I mean, it's not really correct for you to then try and get another bed for this person. What should be done is that the workflow should be to follow back and say, who is this lady? Why is she pretending to be a doctor within NHS England? And why have I got a patient sat on my ward who's just been illegally ejected from hospital by somebody who's a criminal? That's the reality of the situation. Rather than saying, well, a crook's just kicked somebody out of a hospital bed, I'd best go and try and find them another bed with NHS England. I mean, that's not. It's not. You know, working along that pathway isn't really the correct way to do things. And I think that in terms of, you know, safeguarding both your own, you know, professional integrity and that of the on the wider NHS, I think it's really, really important that these issues are, you know, are kind of at least addressed. I understand that you haven't got the ability to be able to police that.
The first thing we need to do, I need to find out what arrangements are being made at the moment in terms of your ongoing care. And once we know that, I'll come back and we can.
Do you think maybe looking at why I'm here is relevant? Because I mean, you know,
it is relevant, but the only access I have to that is through the psychiatric service, so I can't. You know, I can't make separate inquiries outside that system.
So if you
have concerns, you need to talk to a lawyer. If you're concerned about criminal activity.
Well, I don't know.
I'm sorry,
it's not a civil issue, and I respect that your time's limited. So
I'm going to have to draw the conversation to a close because I've got other patients I need to go and see this one. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I can't.
No, you don't need to, Mr. Whittle. I mean, I appreciate that. You're on the General Medical Council, right, as a qualified consultant?
I'm a doctor. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I say, I will try and find out what plans are being made at the moment. You've seen various of the kind of on-call team over the weekend.
I have, yes. I mean, I've been waiting for several days, and one of the other issues, which is going to take up your...
I will try and find out what plans they're making for your ongoing care. Because as I say,
that would be really useful.
It is a psychiatric.
Kind of the point I'm getting at is that if I was sectioned, then you probably wouldn't have the bed taken up on your ward for as long. I should still be under Section 3 because section's been illegally rescinded and I've been illegally ejected from hospital. As an informal patient, I could be waiting here for a week for a bed because informal voluntary beds take precedent as a secondary basis.
I would hope not, because you're occupying an acute medical bed.
This is what I'm saying to you, Adam, but what I'm getting at is that as a section patient, I would be the bed would be found very, very, very quickly. But as an informal patient...
Again, I can't section them.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm saying that effectively I already was, and it was through misconduct and negligence that I'm now not.
I'm going to have to get on around and see some of the other patients.
Fine, okay.
Thank you for expressing your views.
Where do we go from here?
We need to talk to the psychiatric team.
So you're going to liaise with the psychiatric team and find out what's going on with bed allocation. When will I hear back from you? Or
I'll have to find out when we can talk to them.
where are you based? Do you have an office in this hospital or?
In this hospital, but I'm based on this ward at the moment.
Okay, fine.
I'm going to get on that. It's nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Mr. Whittle. All the best.